Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Pink Mike Legal Confessions. You know who I am. I'm the host, Stephanie Garces-Donay, owner of Garces Law Firm, where we help you prepare for the unexpected. So today I have an awesome guest today. You're not going to want to miss this, especially you parents who just sent your kids off to college. You want to tune into this. I'm here with Matt Fakhoury. He is a friend and a colleague of mine. He's a wonderful and respected criminal defense attorney in the area. Attorney Matthew Fakhoury, who has helped countless of people and clients navigate the judicial system and has been named super lawyer. So that's pretty cool. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you please share a little bit more about your background for the viewers that don't know who you are?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Stephanie. I appreciate it. As far as my background, I grew up in the Chicago area, went to DePaul University for undergrad. I moved away to St. Louis and attended St. Louis University School of Law for law school. After I graduated, I began my career at the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, where I was a Cook County Assistant State's Attorney, or a prosecutor, as more commonly known. While there, I was in several different divisions: appeals, first municipal, which just means misdemeanor court in the city, felony court. I was transferred to a few different districts like Rolling Meadows. One of my last assignments was what we call the chief judge assignment, where we did one of our duties was to do a lot of expungements and sealings, or contest them, I should say, on behalf of the state. And while I was there, I began to notice that there was, a disservice, if I can say that, with a lot of people who were attempting to get their record expunged or sealed. I didn't feel they were being represented properly, although I was on the opposite side. And at the same time, I was a professor at DePaul University. I was an adjunct professor there. And a lot of my college students would come up to me and say, "Hey, I got into a bar fight a year ago, and I'm about to graduate, and this is on my record, and I'm worried about it following me in my career. I'm going into medical school, I'm going into professional school, and I'm having trouble, getting accepted to either a job or like a program like that." And my wheels started to turn. I said, man, if somebody really did this right and represented clients properly in the Chicago area, they could really help the community. And that was the inception of Expunge Chicago. So about a year or two later, I started the law offices of Matthew Fakhoury. We started Expunge Chicago shortly thereafter. Our firm motto is expunge your past, expand your future with Expunge Chicago. Our firm focuses on criminal defense, but a large part of our practice area is also on criminal record clearing, which means expungements, sealings, and pardons in the state of Illinois.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for explaining that. And Matt, we're really excited to have you because this is such an interesting topic. And I know you and I talked about this ahead of time, and we were trying to come up with a topic of like, what is relevant? What do people care about? What we do. Well, it's really important because if you know anything about anything as parents, we do our best to try to keep our kids straight and narrow and like on a good path. But, as Matt and I were talking about the one day, sometimes your kid gets a bad hand, or perhaps something happens where they're at the wrong place at the wrong time. So to guide them and protect them is what parents try to do. However, the topic of today is that even good kids find themselves in legal trouble. And so today, Matt's going to talk about kind of how to handle these situations, especially when there's unanticipated events, parents looking for options to help out. So our topic today is what to do if your kids get in legal trouble. And yes, even good kids get in trouble, right, Matt? Not just the bad kids. It's like anyone can get in trouble. So some of the areas we're going to cover today is what rights do parents have, especially for juvenile cases compared to when children pass the age of 18, what type of cases are best handled by legal counsel, whether that's private or public, and we'll talk about the difference in a second, or if a child ends up being convicted or has a criminal record, about something foolish, or maybe something that happened. Again, wrong place and wrong time does happen, so that's not uncommon. And what options do they have? So let's dive in. So just really quick before I start, I had a couple of viewers just join. So to recap, my name is attorney Stephanie Garces-Donay, the owner of Garces Law Firm in Arlington Heights, where we help parents prepare for the unexpected. And joining us today is Matthew Fakhoury with law offices of Matthew Fakhoury, who's also founded Expunge Chicago. And he's going to be sharing his knowledge as a criminal defense attorney highly respected in the community, to talk about what are your options as a parent if your kids get in trouble with the legal system, that is. So if you missed last week's episode, by the way, on Pink Mike Legal Confessions, we talked about how to eliminate self-sabotage and unlock your potential with a certified coach that was really, really awesome. So if you didn't have a chance to see that yet, make sure to check out our Facebook page or the YouTube channel. You'd be surprised what you can learn sitting at your desk watching this. So we welcome here on Tuesdays to talk about different things, and we'll kind of be switching up the topics, as you guys know already. But I know a lot of you have questions, so you don't want to hear about me anymore. We're going to talk now about the viewers. So kind of to dive right in, Matt, one of the questions that comes up a lot is, what if someone's child not directly commit a crime, right? Or break the law, if you want to call it that, but was associated with a group that has a criminal record? Is there a way to separate them from the accusations that are taking place?
There is. So if you're talking about, so first of all, when you're talking about a child, let's just make sure we're talking about the same thing. So if you're talking about a juvenile proceeding, that's any arrest or charges, let's say, for an individual that's under the age of 18, right? So what would otherwise be an adult criminal case is now we're talking about going through the juvenile justice system, which the goal, we like to say, is rehabilitation, right? So with the adult criminal area of law, you're talking more, you hope it's rehabilitation, but truly there's an area of a punishment that goes with it, right? There's an angle or a perspective of punishment. But with the juvenile justice system, the idea or the theory is that we want to rehabilitate any possible offenders or deviant behavior, right? So if your son or daughter is in a group and let's say they get in trouble and there's a police report that's generated, or if your son or daughter is directly charged with something, there are many things you could do, okay? But if there's a group of people, to answer your question directly, that are in trouble and your son or daughter is a part of this and a report or a complaint is generated, there is a way to bifurcate that report, if it's a juvenile proceeding at least, and to try to clear or expunge it, in other words, right? The procedure is a little different than it is in adult court or criminal court or even criminal expungements in adult court, but there is a way to petition the court to separate or redact the paperwork so it doesn't follow this child, this juvenile, for the rest of his life into adulthood, into professional school, into his or her career. So it's expunged and sealed, and it's basically destroyed. So yes, there definitely is. You need some basic information, where the event or complaint occurred, where the what police department was involved, the report number, things of that nature. But yes, there's definitely something you could do to make sure it doesn't follow your son or daughter across his life.
Well, it's fascinating because if what I'm hearing is what you're saying is basically there is an option to prevent, it getting worse, maybe is the right way to say it, right? Because, as you know, we talk a lot about, people being associated with maybe people that are doing bad things, and perhaps they were, in the group, somehow now find an accusation against them. So it's interesting to find that out, Matt, that you can actually take preventative measures so that this doesn't haunt them for the rest of their lives. So thank you for sharing that. We have a question that came in just now. Someone had asked, if my child gets in trouble while they're away at school, what should I do first? Now, this is probably a parent that has just dropped their kid off at college where, fake IDs are really popular and like some of these bars aren't really regulated. So what can they do if their kid gets in trouble while they're not even, in the same zip code?
A few things. So number one is statistically, deviant behavior is going to happen between the ages about 15 to 30, right? That's the highest population, or should age population of people getting into trouble, right? And it's typically males, at least statistically from a sociological standpoint, right? So first of all, almost expect it, all right? Things are going to happen with your son and daughter as they're coming up through life in college in their late teens and early 20s. The second thing is don't panic, right? People are going to get into trouble. You probably got into trouble. I got into a little bit of trouble growing up, right?
Never.
It's never you, of course not. So, don't panic. And third is to hire a professional. And in this setting, you would hire a lawyer, right? Now, when you're sick, you go to the doctor. When there's something that happens at your home, you hire a professional to fix your home, right? It's the same thing here. You hire a professional because the professional, in this case, like a lawyer, will realize the consequences of this particular behavior or of this proceeding well beyond what you're maybe thinking. So, you gave a great example, okay? The fake ID example. It happens all the time, right? In any college town, across the state and across the nation for that matter. But that's a felony, right? You could get charged with a felony for possession of a fake or fraudulent ID. And if your son or daughter, and this happens in Champaign, Illinois all the time, and I have clients there, they went to a bar, they got a fake ID, they tried to get in. For whatever reason, there was a problem. They were arrested either for a felony or misdemeanor. Some of these kids go to court without an attorney because they don't want to tell their parents because they're emancipated at that point. They're 18 or 19 years old. And they get charged with a felony. They plead guilty to this felony, and now it's with them the rest of their life, okay? Because most felonies cannot be expunged. Some can, and you could seal many felonies, but you can't completely erase or expunge a felony if you're convicted of it. So what I would say is get an attorney, because not only are they going to try to resolve the actual case there that's in court at that moment, but they're going to have an eye towards the future and maybe try to get you a disposition like we do that will set you up for an expungement or sealing or some type of criminal record clearing a few years down the road when you're eligible. So hire an attorney. Don't panic. Hire an attorney. Make sure that an attorney is aware of the ramifications of the individual's record and go from there.
That's a great answer. And actually, I love that you said that, don't panic, because actually, I think you and I can agree that's what we tell our clients probably on a daily basis. Like, there's always a solution to the problem, like almost always. So it's interesting, too, that you bring up the age, because some of our viewers may be thinking, their kids might be in college, or maybe they're not in college yet. And correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but you take two different avenues, right, depending on the age. So if someone's 18, they're emancipated, they're considered an adult. If they're not 18, well, sometimes there's different avenues you can take. Is that fair?
That's correct, right? So typically it's going to depend on how you're charged, right? So we can't control as lawyers or even as parents, although to some degree parents could get more involved in a juvenile proceeding, but we can't really control what they're charged with or in what capacity. So sometimes the offense is so serious that a juvenile is going to be charged as an adult. But most of the time, 99% of the time, if it's a juvenile offense, they're going to be charged as a juvenile. And the parents are more involved in that respect. If you're emancipated, you're going to be in big boy court, as I tell my clients. The consequences are more severe. And there are, like you said, solutions to every case. And there are expungements and sealings in a lot of these cases as well, in adult court as well. But if it's a juvenile proceeding, again, the whole basis of the juvenile justice system, which, there are strong roots here in Illinois, in Cook County has one of the first juvenile justice systems, is on rehabilitation. So most juvenile cases can be expunged or sealed because, again, it's rehabilitation. And as I was saying before, when I was an adjunct professor at DePaul, there was the biggest indicator, and you brought this up earlier, Stephanie, as to deviance or criminality in a juvenile or a young adult, is his peers, right? It's not a single family household. It's not socioeconomic status. It's not the music they're listening to or the video games they're playing. It's the delinquency of their peers. So if you see that there's problems with your son or daughter going into college with the people they're hanging out with, right? Those kids are getting into trouble. There's run-ins with the police. The best predictor of the future is the past, as I tell people. It's going to happen. And now factor in immaturity, maybe some alcohol, maybe minor drug use, things like that. It's an elixir for a very bad experience at one point or another in an individual's college career. So, keep that in mind as you're watching your children go through college.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is great advice too, Matt, because I think this is like the practical advice. Like, we're attorneys, yes, we know the law, but this is like practical advice. And I actually love the fact that you're honing in on the peers, because I do think that a lot of people underestimate that. They say, oh, they're just being boys or they're just being girls. I hear that saying a ton. Parents, when the kid acts immature or does something, oh, they're just doing this because of whatever. But perhaps it's bigger than that. Perhaps there's a way to really kind of supervise better, or even maybe just take note of the people they're hanging out with and what's going on. So I love that you talk about that. Now, speaking of expungements, is there a time period that you recommend individuals wait for pursuing an expungement?
Yes. So if possible, you should expunge the case right away, right? So if you have a pending case, obviously you have to wait until the case is resolved or there's some type of official disposition before you expunge it. But once the case is resolved, you could possibly expunge it right away if the case is dismissed, right? We call it a nolli pros. here in Illinois, or what we call an SOL, which means stricken off docket with leave to reinstate. There's a slight delay. You have to wait about 4 or 5 months for that. But if you could expunge it immediately, obviously you should do so. If you plead guilty to an offense, okay, there are waiting periods. You cannot expunge it right away, especially in adult court. So let's say you're, charged, let's think of something typical like a retail theft or a minor drug possession charge, which is common in people of that age. If you plead guilty to that, you might be able to get your record expunged or sealed, but you're going to have to wait 2, possibly 3 years after your sentence is over. A lot of people think, oh, they Google it because everybody's an expert these days, right? I'm an expert on medicine. I'm an expert on all these things because I Google it. So a lot of our clients will Google, expungements and when can I wait or when can I file it? And people say, oh, well, it says 2 years from the time that I was done with my case, or 2 years from the time I received the case. And the answer is no, it's 2 years, possibly depending on the outcome of the case, from the time the case was completely resolved, which means the sentence was over. So you might have to wait a good 2 or 3 years, depending on how long you were sentenced, before you could possibly expunge or seal a record.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a couple questions that are coming in, a lot of viewers actually today. So one of the questions that one of our viewers has is, what are some major factors parents or young adults should know/look for when searching for an attorney? That's a great question, because I think, like you said, people go on Google, but what are some things they should consider? What do you think about that?
So here are a few things I would consider. Number one is you want to pick an attorney who is familiar with that local jurisdiction. Okay, so I have clients who call me from all over the state, and they offer me, a lot of money to go represent them in Southern Illinois or Central Illinois. And I say no. I said, I appreciate it and it's flattering, but I'm going to do you a disservice because I'm not familiar with those judges. I'm not familiar with those prosecutors. I'm not familiar with the local procedures, and I would not do you. I would not serve you properly as an attorney, right? So what I would recommend is, number one, find an attorney in that local community wherever this case is pending, right? Number two is go on Google and look up this attorney's reviews, right? Now, luckily with technology, there's Yelp, there's Avo, which is a great place that people leave reviews. There's Google where people leave reviews. And, every once in a while, you're going to see kind of a weird review. But if there are themes, right? And if you see that constantly this person is getting reviewed at 5 stars and they're saying the same things, he's responsive or she's, great, and she calls us back and whatever, so on and so forth, that's going to be the case. But if you see that this person obviously is not, responsive or, is not properly representing people in these reviews, I would steer away from them. The other thing from our realm in a criminal perspective, when you're thinking about, an expungement or sealing or a criminal case, you want an attorney like our law firm that does it from start to finish. We'll represent you on minor and major charges, right? Whether it's a traffic ticket or whether it's a Class X felony. And our eye is towards the future, right? We're going to think about the best disposition we could get you in order to expunge or seal this down the road, right? So we're going to take the case from the beginning, and then we're going to finish it all the way through the end until that judge signs the expungement or sealing order. So in this realm, in the criminal defense realm, that's what I advise. You want an attorney you're going to work with from start to finish. You don't want to separate this and hire one attorney to do this and hire the other attorney to do the expungement or sealing. You want somebody who's going to be familiar with the case from the beginning and see through to the end. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah. Great. I love that. And by the way, Google reviews are something that as attorneys, we can't dispute. So for those of you watching saying, okay, I'm going to Google me or Matt or whoever you're looking for, make sure you check those out, because I can tell you the reviews on there, I didn't pay people to put them there, or good or bad, but I can't really dispute them. And so these things matter because people are going to be honest. We all look for reviews like the other day, I was looking for a dentist. I was Googling reviews because I want to make sure I know who's about to do my dental work. So that sort of thing matters. And that's great advice. We had a really interesting comment from one of our reviewers talking about how important it is to think about that people forget that the brain doesn't fully develop and recognize the consequences, much later than the age of 18. And social pressure is really strong for young people. Matt, kind of going off of that, I mean, this is a true statement, and thank you for that comment. But one of the things I talk about, I guess with my younger clients or even clients that are much older than me, I always tell them it's all mindset, right? You have to be the leader, don't be the follower. And is there any advice that you would give our viewers or or even young parents that are trying to deal with their kids' adolescence. Maybe they're in a group that isn't great. What's kind of advice would you give them, practical advice outside of just the legal stuff to try to help them
Sure.
with this pressure?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I think that's a great comment, and it's true, right? Your mind is not fully developed, they say, till about the age of 25 or 26, right? Unfortunately, legally, right, the consequences are fully developed at the age of 18, right?
Yeah.
So, but the court recognizes that, right? So if you're a first-time offender, if you are a young man or a young woman and you get into some trouble, even serious trouble, again, the goal is not to send you to prison on your first case and throw away the key, right? The court recognizes that more than ever, and there's diversionary programs, is what we call them, in order to try to help you out. But from a practical sense, what do you do? Okay, what do you do is you tell your children, because your children really are going to be good or bad, so to speak, whether they're around you living at home or they're away at college, right? They're the same individual, right? So you can't monitor them all the time. But what you tell your children is to trust their gut. If they're in a situation where they're at a frat party, right, and one of the older frat members is bringing heavy drugs like cocaine, right, because it happens in college campuses all across the nation, and they're distributing and using this cocaine, right? You tell your son or daughter who you've raised, who hopefully you've instilled these values throughout their life, that they need to separate themselves from that situation, right? They need to remove themselves, because that situation is not only going to lead to drug possession or drug use, but it could lead to a possible rape charge. It could lead to so many other things, right? A fight, right, where somebody could be very seriously injured because you're outside of your mind, almost literally, right, when you're on a substance. So I would tell parents to, obviously monitor the peers of their friends, but at the same time, reinstill those values in your children. Say, hey, if you feel something's wrong, there's no shame in walking away from this party, from walking away from this girl, from removing yourself from this situation in order to stay out of trouble. Because now you're an adult, you're not a child anymore, and the consequences are going to be more severe.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's wonderful advice, on top of the fact that, in college especially, you have this need to want to fit in with your peers. And what's interesting about college, and I'm remembering my experience personally, is like you have so many different people from different walks of life all in the same place. Some people who obviously are there to study and they graduate, and other people, they don't graduate. So that's actually not talked about enough, I think. I had plenty of smart, had a lot of ambitious students that just took a wrong path and ended up dropping out, getting expelled, etc. So that is something to think about, parents, as you're sending your kids off to college, or just in general. Those are things that people don't talk about, and again, it leads to bad consequences because they made bad decisions. And one of the questions that came in, kind of similar to that one, is about the license. Can my child lose their license from a red light camera or parking tickets? That's a good question.
That's a great question. So if your child gets into some parking difficulties, it doesn't pay the parking fees or traffic violations, yes, their license could get suspended. You see this happening where students are afraid, or children are afraid to tell their parents that, hey, I got a couple parking tickets. I didn't realize I can't park on the street when I'm away at school, or I went through these red lights. So yes, it can happen. So just be aware of that. I mean, a red light violation, when we hear of it, isn't the end of the world. But again, now that you're an adult, it could suspend your license. And actually, when you're under the age of 21, there's less leniency for those types of things, rather than when you're over 21, they'll let you go a little bit with some of these traffic or moving violations. But when you're under 21, they will actually suspend your license a lot quicker when they feel that you're possibly a risk to yourself or others on the road.
Interesting. Yeah. You think it'd be the opposite, but maybe they're, again, the court thinks about it another way, obviously. That's interesting. So I know we had talked, I know my viewers, I promised I would tell them about private lawyers versus public lawyer. So if someone doesn't have the money, obviously money is a big factor. And let's be honest, it's a lot to do with people's choices in hiring private or public attorneys. What happens when someone doesn't have a lawyer, especially in a criminal case, no matter what kind of criminal case? What are their options?
So their options, if they don't have a lawyer, are to ask for a public defender, right? So a public defender is a lawyer. Like, a lot of people don't realize, it's almost insulting that they don't realize that a public defender is actually a lawyer. They're a licensed lawyer just like you or I, right?
Mhm.
But the public defender is provided by the state to represent them. And they're free, in other words. So the way to do that is, typically the correct way to do that is that the judge will have you fill out what we call an affidavit of assets and liabilities to see if you're eligible to get this public defender. Assuming that you are and you're indigent, the court will provide you with this public defender. And many of them are great. Most of them are fine,
Yeah,
right? They
great.
actually are good in the sense that they're usually in the same courtroom every day. They know the prosecutors very well. They know the judges very well. They know the tendency of the judge and how he or she would rule. Now, with that said, I also think it's better in most instances to hire a private attorney if you can, okay? If you do have the resources, even limited, I would go and try to find an attorney on Google, like you were mentioning. And even if, I have a lot of clients who come to me and say, hey, I here's what I have, here's my case, what is your fee? And I tell them, and they say, hey, I can't afford that. Can you help me out a little bit? And of course I do, right? I help them out. I'll either reduce the fee or we'll do some type of payment plan, even a long payment plan over several months or a year or so to help them. But from my perspective, I might have less cases than a public defender has, so I could devote more attention to your particular case. So that's one advantage. In addition, I have several attorneys who work for me. So if I can't get to your case that particular morning for whatever reason, if you hire me last minute, we have several other great associates. A shout out to Colleen Lefevre and Caitlin Wilder, who are great attorneys, who are motivated attorneys, who are experienced attorneys, who will take your case and are just as good as me. So with the resources of a private lawyer or private firm, you have the resources of a firm, right? So that's one advantage, that you get individual attention and maybe a little bit better customer service in that realm, rather than the public defender's office, because they're very burdened. They have a lot of cases that they're dealing with in most instances. So, sometimes I would look at both. If you really can't afford it, go with a public defender. If you don't like the public defender's office, there's one more option. You could go to a legal aid clinic. There are criminal defense attorneys at the legal aid clinic. You have to apply similarly to what you would apply with the affidavit of assets and liabilities with the court. And you could see if you could qualify for a free attorney with one of these legal aid organizations, which are all over the city as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so we can kind of clarify that, what we're talking about is specifically criminal cases. So I like to do a lot of civil cases. And I do like to kind of specify to people that this only works in the criminal setting. Unfortunately, in the civil case, meaning anything outside of criminal, those, unfortunately, you don't have a public defender. You don't have someone that's assigned to you, however. But like Matt was saying, we also kind of offer alternative fee arrangements to make sure it's feasible to you, because that is who we service as well. So we're not just saying going to turn you away because you can't pay. We do offer alternative fees, so payments, and that's kind of why I want to talk about that, because there is a difference between the civil and the criminal matters. But yes, of course, anyone that is charged with a criminal case, of course, is entitled to representation. I mean, it's your right. So in case you're confused about that, I hope that clarifies that. Now, I know we talked a little bit about costs, but for expungements, Matt, in your experience, is there like a range for expungements of like payment? Does it matter in the case? How can someone say, is this affordable for me or not? How do you figure that out?
So if you talk to 10 different attorneys, you might get 10 different quotes, is the truth.
Yeah.
Now, the way we price our expungements or ceilings is the number of cases, the severity of the case or cases, and the number of jurisdictions we have to file in. So, many people will come up to us, and this happened last week. Somebody's about 40 years old. He's about to change jobs. He goes, man, when I was in my 20s, I was hanging around with the wrong crowd. Ironically enough, we were talking about that earlier. I got into trouble all over the state. And we ran their criminal background. And that's what you need to do to see, what you're working with, so to speak. And they had cases in all over Cook County, in Rolling Meadows, and Skokie. They had cases in Lake County. They had cases in DuPage County. So at that point, with many cases in multiple jurisdictions, it's going to be more expensive, right? The more cases you're working with, and the more jurisdictions we would need to file in, the more expensive it's going to be. Is it affordable? Yes, it's affordable. I'm sure you could find attorneys who would do this for different pricing, but you also want to find an attorney, like we were saying earlier, who's going to make your case into a story and not just a file, right? That's what I tell clients, right? the judge is going to see you as a file, or that prosecutor might see your case as just a file. It's my job to add a pulse to your file. So when we do that hearing, I'm going to know everything about you, leading up to your cases, during your cases, after your cases. I'm going to want character letters. We're going to want awards and certificates. I'm going to bring your family in so they could possibly testify, or at least or be in the gallery, so the judge sees that you have people there, that you're tied to the community. So, for us personally, if you're asking me, we're not the cheapest firm out there when it comes to expungements or sealings. We definitely feel we're the best, and that we service the client the best, because we focus on these things that maybe other attorneys don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for answering that, because I think the viewers are always wondering that. And you get the calls as much as I do. People want to know, is this feasible for me? And so you've heard it here first. It really depends on your case, but also in general, don't ever feel like you can't reach out to me or to Matt personally if you have any questions. We certainly do free consultations. Matt, are you doing free consultations?
We do free consultations. We do them through Zoom or in person now. We're happy to do a free consultation. Absolutely.
Cool, great, good. That's what I wanted to confirm. So yeah, you heard it here first. Again, there are free consultations. So I always tell viewers, we do get a lot of calls sometimes. People will say, "Oh, I watched this video on this. Can you put me in the right direction?" And so I love what you said earlier. It's like you add a pulse to the case. That is so awesome. I kind of got like a visual when you said that. So that's pretty cool. Very cool.
Don't take that line from me. Don't use that with your clients.
Okay, I'll. Yeah, I was gonna say you might wanna. What is it called?
We'll copyright it. Yeah, we'll trademark it.
You might want to copyright that. But Matt, do you have anything else to share for the viewers that we haven't covered? Anything else you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to today?
You're cutting out on me. I'm sorry, you cut out on me a little bit. You said anything else I'd like to touch on?
Yeah, if there's anything else that we didn't mention or something you wanted to touch on, you can certainly share it with us.
The only thing I'd like to touch on maybe that we haven't talked about is, we talked about peers and students getting into trouble. I had a client who was literally the valedictorian of his high school class, and he was working at a local retail shop, and unfortunately, he got into a little bit of trouble when friends came in and asked him, to give him a discount on some items, and he did, and he didn't realize the consequences of it. Now, this kid was going into college. He had a full ride to school. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Sorry, okay. I'm just
Sorry.
confused that this could actually be a case, but go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was the valedictorian of his high school. This was in the area. And he got into a little bit of trouble, and he came to me and he was charged with a misdemeanor, and it was a Class A. It was the highest level misdemeanor. So we were able to resolve the case, but again, our eye was towards clearing up his record, because this young man ultimately wanted to be a doctor. So what I'm saying is, the reason I brought this up is, even these, like you said earlier, great kids, a valedictorian who's never been in trouble before, can get into trouble. It's not the end of the world. Just make sure you get the right help. Somebody who could take the case from beginning to end, and who realizes the severity and the consequences that this may have on the individual's record or career. So that's the only other advice I'd give.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, no case too small or too big is basically covered by your firm, which is great, because I think even that example, that seems so minimal, but to think that there's consequences for that, that's exactly why we have you on the show, so that we can educate viewers on this sort of information and use our platform so that people really understand that they do have options and there's always a solution. And that goes for any legal matters, by the way, for the viewers. It's not just criminal matters, it's anything. We do estate planning, we do probate, we do civil cases. If you have any issues, always feel free to pick up the phone. Again, free consultations. You can always just pick our brain and we'll point you in the right direction if we can't help you. So that's great to know. So Matt, if anybody wants to contact you, where is the best way that they can contact you?
Please visit us on expungechicago.com. That is our expungement website. We also have illinoisdefense.com, actually ildefense.com. Our phone number is 847-920-4540. Seems like everybody does things online now, so please visit our websites. We're always happy to offer a free consultation on criminal and expungement or record clearing matters as well.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for all your information, for taking the time out of your day to really educate people. And I personally thank you for spending time with us today, because I know how much information you've given, and it's really invaluable to our viewers. And I promise you, people will be very happy if they watch this video, because they would have learned something new, especially for the parents that are nervous about their kids and who they're hanging out with. This is really important stuff. So you guys know me already, where to contact me. But you can always call or text us to set up consultations for us personally. We have a website, www.garceslawfirm.com. You can always chat us there as well. And we are fully bilingual. We speak Spanish. So if you need anyone that needs those services, please keep us in mind. So I want to thank all of our viewers for your questions. We had a lot of viewers today, so I'm very happy and thankful for our loyal viewers who like watching this on Tuesdays. And Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We encourage you to watch every time we have a video after the fact. You can always see it on YouTube. You can see it on Facebook. And we always can help share this within your family and friends. People want to see this stuff. It's free. So why not? Of course, if your child ever encounters a legal issue, please contact Matt. He knows what he's doing. I promise you that. And I just cherish the opportunity to work with any of our viewers that may want some legal services, or if it's free consultation, we can handle that as well. And so can Matt. So as always, I invite you here to watch the show on Tuesdays at 1 p.m., Pink Mike Legal Confessions. And Matt, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Of course. And we hope to see you guys again next week. Take care, everyone.